have a quorum, from what I understand. Is that correct, Deanna?
Yes, you do. We would like to also have Dan read the rules of the meeting at the beginning, if you didn't mind.
That's fine.
Sure thing. So as usual, this is a web-based meeting, so we're operating under the following procedures. This session is being audio recorded just like every other CCP meeting. Please be advised that today we're also recording the video of the proceedings. To ensure sound quality, I'd ask that people remain on mute unless they're speaking, along with commissioners and staff. Applicants and members of the public should have their phones on mute unless it's their turn to present or answer questions. We don't have any public hearings tonight, so I'll skip the rest of it and turn it back over to you, Frank.
Okay, thank you. That was my cuckoo clock, so it is 7. So can we have a motion to approve the minutes from the September 15th meeting, please? Everybody had a chance to look at them?
Yep, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of meeting
Okay, that's
for
saying,
September 15.
we have a second? Oh, no, that was saying September 15th. Can we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second him.
Okay, that's Les?
Yep.
All right. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes from September 15th? If not, all in favor of accepting those minutes?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? None, so the minutes are accepted. Communications, it looks like we have a communication from Preston.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's for me.
A
Yep, so
text
we have
amendment.
a text amendments that came over from Preston, and we did look them over, but Kathy, if you didn't mind, why don't you give a quick synopsis of them?
You do this to me all the time. I can't even remember what's on there. No, I'm just kidding. It's just to we allow for wineries in Preston in residential areas. And the state recently adopted a statute that would allow them also to sell beer and other kind of liquor that is produced in Connecticut, provided only 20% of their sales is, the alternate alcohol. So we just added a provision in our winery regulations that would allow for the sale of liquor that it is made in Connecticut. That's it. And that they have to get a vendor's license.
Okay.
And we don't have any, as
We
far as
don't
I'm
have to take
concerned,
any
okay.
action on those.
No.
Nope, we have we don't find any municipal problems with this reg change. I am curious though how the state expects you to enforce the 20% rule.
Yeah, we're not going to. It is, and I did put a little blurb in an updated version that has something in quotes that says, or brackets that says, this will not be enforced by the town. It is a state requirement. So, yeah, we did that.
Right.
We never had any intention, but I just wanted it in there so when people read through it, they knew they had to meet certain things.
Great.
Question.
Go ahead, Singh.
So we don't have anything like that in Norwich though, right?
We allow for wineries in Norwich.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Not in residential areas though. Is it?
No, that's where you would
Yeah,
have
we
them.
do.
Uh,
We do.
It's in the,
It's in the zoning regs. I can find it real quick if
oh, I
you
know
really want me to
I know
find
we
it.
have wineries. I didn't think it was in the residential.
Yeah, that's the only place that can be because it's agricultural.
Okay, yeah.
So
Yeah.
when
Don't worry about it. Deanna, don't worry about it.
Okay.
So
So,
we don't have to make any changes in Norwich though with this new
Well,
state law.
You might want to, but you don't really have any, we don't have any wineries here. So,
I know.
I mean, we had someone come in that said, we want to be able to sell beer. So I added it.
Okay, thank you.
So if you ever get a winery, you can amend the regulations to add it.
Absolutely.
Thing's gonna start a winery
Again,
now.
it's so much easier doing it,
Yeah,
in the way that most most communities have it with, their planning and zoning commissions make amendments to their regulations. It's such a streamlined process, and it's just to make ordinance changes here in Norwich is just
Terrible.
such a arduous process. And so we don't usually we make a lot of changes at one time usually.
A wholesale change, not just one little thing at a time.
Exactly, comprehensive.
Okay, so we've received that communication from Preston. Under new business, number one, we have a city council referral regarding a portion of High Street to be discontinued. Can we
Yep,
take that
do we
up right
have
now,
that, Dan?
Deanna?
Yep, Dan, can you show that? So the council, there was a piece of property, I actually have Mr. Aliano here this evening, so he can speak if you didn't mind him to. This is a piece of property that he owns, but the street that's on his property that was transferred to him was never discontinued. So he had come in for a proposal to build a structure, a storage facility on his property in the middle of what would have been the street, but the street was not discontinued yet. So we worked with our city attorney and the council to get this moving as quickly as we could so that that can be abandoned. There is some stipulations that they have in there so that they can make sure from a utility standpoint there, if you read the document. So we would recommend that that you give a favorable referral to the city council to discontinue the portion of High Street, including those stipulations that are listed in the referral, stay in place. And that we think that the proposal is consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development to facilitate and streamline economic development in the city. And if Mr. Aliano, if you don't mind him to speak, he is available.
Michael is available by Zoom? Is it, or?
Yep, he's right
Yes, I'm
on the call.
Zoom
Yep.
meeting.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Well, good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good. Would you like to say anything about this referral?
Just that we believe that 1978 through the Redevelopment Authority that process has already been done. However, no one was able to find the city council minutes regarding this. The property was transferred over in 1970 something, and it's believed that the city would have done their process of abandoning the street at that time. So we do feel it's already abandoned, but everyone felt this would be the quickest way to get to it. We have documentation showing that there's been a chain or rope or cable or gates since the 80s going across this road. So it really hasn't been utilized since at least the 80s, showing that it's obviously not needed. Obviously we're going to be able to build something. The topography of that property is rather difficult. So this is one of the only areas without extremely modifying the land that we can build something. And it's obviously going to add to the basis and be productive for our organizations and hopefully benefit Norwich at the same time.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Aliano?
I move approval.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the referral positively to the city council by Mike Lehan. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, that was Les. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Great.
opposed?
Can I add, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Any opposed to the positive referral?
I want to hear what Deanna wants to say.
Oh,
I
just can we
assume it's
add the
to make sure that it's
can
with the
we add-
conditions.
Yes, can we add just the conditions and also, that they had the stipulations and also the reason, that I stated? Can we just pass that along to the council as well?
Yeah, do you want me to make
the
that part of the
motion?
motion?
What's that, Mike?
No,
You want me to make that part of the motion?
Yeah, why don't you just go ahead and amend the motion to include that?
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve the abandonment of High Street upon the conditions that were outlined in the letter, and for the reasons that it's not against our POCD and will in fact further economic development in Norwich.
Okay, and Les, do you second that amended motion?
Yes, I'll second that again.
Okay, any further discussions or questions? Again, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The referrals made positively with the conditions. All
Thank you.
right, number 2 under new business is the CAM number 20-02 for High Street for a self-storage facility located on the proposed discontinued street. So,
Yep.
so
this
can we
relate-
take that up? I assume that's what Mr. Aliano is also here for.
Yeah, so this application, just so is clear to you, that the application can be approved administratively by zoning. It's the building is less than 10,000 square feet. It meets all the criteria to get a zoning permit, except for that the building and the site development for the new building for commercial use is in the CAM. So per our regulations, it needed to be referred to them. We did get a response back from DEEP. Dan, do you want to push that back here? That basically it's up that they don't have any comments about it. Really, the proposal to put in the storage facility atop already impervious surface, not waterfront, not within the flood hazard zone, is going to cause little disturbance. So they don't really, they're not concerned about it. They did note that we should be looking at stormwater volumes and making sure they're not increased in erosion and sediment control. But that was the response from DEP. So we would ask on this one to just approve the coastal site plan application with the stipulation that the proposal receives zoning approval. And for the reason that due to the location, the proposal will not affect any coastal resources. Unless you want to hear from Mr. Aliano, I'm comfortable with you making a decision to just move forward with approving the application.
Does Mr. Aliano want to say anything about this?
Unless you have any questions for me, I really don't have anything to add regarding this.
Okay, thank you. So any members have any questions for Mr. Aliano, or can we have a motion to approve this?
Do we have any plans or elevation drawings of the building?
You know what, Dan, did you put any up here or not with this application? Let's look. So we have Jason Vincent helped with the drawing. This is actually the property that we were talking about. This little 2B is the portion that we need to transfer over that we just did the referral. And then go back one more drawing on that, Dan, I think. Jason Vincent, to show on the site plan where that building would be in that property. Right now, the assessor has the property wrapping around that High Street portion. That's why we need to discontinue and make sure that that's all together. And it's a 40 by 40 storage building. I don't believe we have any elevations yet built for the building yet, because I think Mr. Aliano was waiting to move forward with getting architectural plans, because he would have to pay for them up front, and it didn't make sense to do that yet. Is that correct, Michael?
That is correct. I don't know if I can share them. I do have some 3D renderings that we've drawn, but we're going to do it's going to be a prefab steel building, but we're going to do an IFAS facade on it, similar to the American Ambulance building, similar colors. There's multiple values for doing that. One, it's a great insulation value. It'll make the building airtight, and it'll make the building somewhat aesthetically pleasing. It really is going to be hidden, as far as the location is surrounded by trees and completely overlooked by residents above. So you really won't be able to see the building, but it's always our intention to make things aesthetically pleasing.
Can I ask another question? So High Street goes down to where the building is going to be. And the only part where we requested or we recommended abandoning is the little cul-de-sac. Is that right?
No, that whole portion.
Oh, the entire portion. Okay. So where is...
So right now, the green area is what Mr. Aliano showed by the assessor's map, that he owns that, but they didn't own the street portion. According to our records, the city, our city attorney looked into it and said, no, that wasn't transferred, even though it shows on a deed to Mr. Aliano that he has it, but they didn't discontinue it. So that's what we're doing, is discontinuing that portion. And what he was talking about where the gate is, if Dan just wanted to show kind of where the gate has been across there for a while.
So, okay, right there. Okay, got it. Totally understand.
Okay.
So, okay, very good.
Okay, so.
I'm fine.
All right, thank you, Kathy.
Because you won't even be able to see it, basically. No. Yeah, no problem.
All right, so I don't know, did anybody make a motion?
No one
I'll
did. But
All
I'll
right,
make
so
that
can we-
motion.
All right, Kathy's made a motion to approve the coastal area plan, and can we have a second?
I'd like to second that motion. This is Jason.
Jason's making a second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. The CAM is approved for number 20-02 High Street Self-Storage Facility.
in May, we, in the approval letter and for our records, put that it was due to the location, the proposal is not going to affect coastal resources. That was what I mentioned as the reason. Are you comfortable with that, Kathy, since you made the motion?
Yes, yes. I have one
Okay.
other question, though. So
Sure.
is that driveway that you have on there, is that existing? Does it just end at where the gate is? So,
That road exists. That road
okay, so
exists
it
to that
all
point. That's-
exists. So it's all paved, you're not going to have to pave it for this new building? Oh,
No.
That's all.
And Mr.
Okay.
Aliano, do you want to comment on that?
No, that's accurate. It's paved all the way to the cul-de-sac. And we're going to rip up a 40 by 40 roughly section of the asphalt, replace that with a concrete slab and build it. Well, there'll be 6 concrete footings and then a concrete slab in that 40 by 40 area with that building on top of it.
And what?
Dan,
what
can you
is
show
it-
that drawing again? It's that one. See, that's where it's going to go, Kathy, the end of the
Yeah.
cul-de-sac.
Yeah, okay. And what is, what's the use of the building? Just storage?
It's technically going to be a self-storage facility. It'll be owned by American Group Realty, owns the property, and then leased to one of my other companies for storing of equipment.
All right, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so we've
All right.
already moved and seconded and approved it, so
Yep.
we can move on to the next order of new business, which is 192 North Main Street, location approval for street stuff.
Okay, so this is a little unusual. Usually we have a application for location approval that comes with a brand new site plan. This doesn't, because their building is existing. This is the old Savage Hardware store building, and Street Stuff is located just down the road. So they are at 4 Central Avenue, and what they're doing is purchasing this building for their showroom. So, but what the state requires, if you are selling motor vehicles, because they're selling motorcycles, that they have to be able to repair their motorcycles there. So, but they have no intention of repairing motorcycles on this site for customers, but they would do like the repair and maintenance for their motorcycles that they'll be selling on that site, but it won't be where people would go to get their repairs of their motorcycles. But DMV requires for them to be able to sell that they have to be able to repair. So this is 192 and 198 North Main Street. And so if you can show Dan the rest of the site plan, they don't have a full site plan, but this is the existing, the building footprint, the display area inside and the parking lot. Again, this is the old hardware store.
So this is
Savage
all
Hardware store.
existing?
Yes,
Why do they need approval from us?
because it's never been auto for the selling motorcycles. So they need location approval from K7, the K7 form for DMV.
That doesn't go before the zoning board of appeals?
Not here, it's us, you guys.
Okay, I'm sorry,
But we're just approving this as a location for DMV to
It's,
sell
that's
Certificate of
it for
sell
location.
DMV. It's not,
motorcycles.
yep,
it's a-
that's it.
Saying
So-
it's
Certificate of
compatible with our
location.
zoning regulations.
all right.
And so in our regulations, it talks about that you have to stipulate that the location is suitable for the intended use and that's not going to interfere with the safety of the public. And this property won't. And like I said, the stipulation will be, and they've actually commented it on their own memo, is they're not going to do repairs on this site of customer vehicles. They're going to do those off-site at 4 Central Avenue. That would be the stipulation, because they don't really want to. DMV is making them say that they have repaired here, but they're going to do it at their location up the road. This is really
Okay.
their showroom.
Okay, so This is only a certificate of location, and it's not a site plan, because if it's a site plan, doesn't the plan have to be filed with the town clerk? And so
Yeah,
we should
so this is
probably
not a site
change what
plan.
it's called, because you have it as a site development plan.
You know why they called it that? Because there's nothing on our system to track it yet, because we don't have that, we've not really had these as
Mhm.
just the location
Okay.
approval. So they just gave it a site development plan number and then put location approval LA next to it. So it's really just a
Okay.
location approval. We won't be
Okay.
doing any Mylars, anything like that. It's just so we can be able to sign off on the K7 form that you have approved it and looked at it for safety, and that it's not going to interfere with any traffic or the public.
Okay. I have no
All right.
problem with that.
All right, any other questions? Can we have
If
a
you would just, if
motion?
you make a motion, if you do make a motion, would you stipulate that the customer repairs are going to be conducted at 4 Central Avenue, just so we know that that's where they're going to be?
Okay, so can we have a motion to that effect, please?
I will make a motion to approve the certificate of location, not the site plan, because that's exempt from us. And that the customer repairs will be done at, what did you say, 4
Yep, 4 Central Avenue,
Avenue?
located 75 feet away.
Yes. Okay,
Okay.
that's my motion.
You have a
I'll second that. Singh, second.
Singh seconds the motion. Any other discussion? There being no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The approval is given for the location approval. All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So then we have no old business, no extensions, no bond requests under other business. We have a discussion of potential water-dependent construction yard use in waterfront development zone with an NCDC guest discussion.
Yep, so Frank, I'm gonna, if you don't
Is this what
mind.
we're going into executive session for, or is that something else?
Nope, this is just a discussion about a use. Later on, it's something about property acquisition. So right now, we're just talking about uses. I have Jason Vinson here for the meeting, as well as Tucker Braddock. I believe Jason has a little short presentation he wants to show to you, so we're going to turn it over to Jason. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How's everybody doing tonight? Good evening.
Hey, Jason.
Hey, Jason.
Give me 1 second here because I had made some modifications to my presentation that I don't want to present. Okay,
For the record, I will want to be clear for everybody that I am on the board of directors of NCDC. So
yeah, so Dan, if you could do a screen share adjustment for me, that'd be great.
And I would like to, for the record, also say that I am on the board of NCDC as well. This is Singh.
So,
Jason, I made you the host, so you should be able to, there you go.
Great. Thank you. Let's see if I can.
Jason,
That's what we'll do. Yeah, thank you. All right, just getting every technology, just getting caught up here.
can you hear me at all?
Can you hear me? No?
Yep, we could hear you, Tucker.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Well,
So Tucker, do you want to start off?
yeah, I'd like to start off. Thank you very much. I'm involved in the Harbor Commission and have been, and it's been a great pleasure. We're sitting on 10 miles of linear miles of river frontage, which is the Thames River, the Shetucket River, and the east and west branch of the Yantic River. And we're constantly looking for opportunities where we can make some inroads and convert some of this land into a more positive taxable opportunity. We're hemmed in pretty much on east and west sides with the now GW Railroad. It was a Vermont Central and Provident Worcester, but we're somewhat hemmed in. But we have found some pockets, and we'd like to have the opportunity to explore these pockets so that, to again, make them more useful to our community. There's the Shipping Street area and also the New Wharf Road area, the area where Hollyhock Island is pretty well developed at this point and continuing the development. And Jason and I have talked, and Deanna and I, we have talked about different ideas that we can maybe solve some of these problems. It is in a floodway, some floodplain activity. And Jason and Deanna, I think, has come up with maybe a solution, and Jason is exploring that, and we're talking about that to, again, utilize some of these brownfield opportunities. We have looked at a brownfield going back to 2013, done by Paul Burgess on a property there, and then 2015, which was done by Ty and Bond. Now, at that time, it wasn't a feasible thing for the city to be involved in, but because it involved so much money, and I thought one of the answers might be to find somebody who would have an interest in this. And that's what I've been trying to do, and hopefully we can accomplish this. Where the properties would be transferred, and I think
Tucker?
I'm going to get
Tucker,
over.
we're not going to talk about
Tucker, we're just
Tucker,
talking
we're
about
gonna-
the site.
the
site,
uses.
the neighborhood.
Excuse me, Jay.
We're just talking about the neighborhood right now, Tucker.
Okay, Jay. Okay. Well, Jason, why don't I let you go
Okay,
from
great.
there?
Perfect. Thank you, Tucker. That was a good introduction. I appreciate it. So on the screen right now, I'm just going to walk you through a little bit about the Thamesville neighborhood. So Thamesville is a historic neighborhood. The historic uses were more industrial, related to water-dependent activities. Shipping and transportation were key functions of what happened in this neighborhood. And over time, the market demand for those types of activity was reduced, and we've had a number of vacancies that have emerged within the neighborhood over the past decade, with several of the sites being vacant for more than a decade. What we're trying to do back in 2012 as part of a citywide regional brownfield initiative, the community looked at alternative development concepts, and at that time, we're really pushing a residential mixed-use idea within this neighborhood as an opportunity to try to attract private investment, and thinking that some of the market would be here. You know, Norwich's number one economic sector is housing. There's over $100 million worth of residential rental activity that happens in this community a year. So its premier economic development activity is housing. So recognizing that that was part of the plan. What they uncovered around that time, unfortunately, was that the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, redesignated the channel along the Thames River to a floodway, and the floodway regulations, being more strict and more intense, do not allow for housing within the floodway. So while the city's plans were to try to attract that type of investment, that kind of investment now is at odds with federal and state policies regarding how to invest in a floodplain. Floodplain regulations don't prevent development. They allow for it, but they have more strict policies and procedures that have to be adhered to. So what I want to just show you a little bit about what we're talking about here. So, you know, Thamesville is one of the nodes within the community. So the community has a number of different community structure components, small villages, if you will, that have coalesced around, you know, business activities, mostly within walking distance of housing. You know, that's the fabric of our town, Thamesville being one of those places. And this area is about 50 or so acres of land, mostly zoned for commercial, general commercial and waterfront development uses. Many of the sites have already been developed and just don't have active use because of a lack of market alignment with what the uses might be and what how the buildings and properties have been developed. So there are 18 properties that are out there right now in this neighborhood. As the sites now are just depicted on the map, just to give you a feel for, you know, where some of the property lines are relative to the aerial photograph. And, you know, this graphic still needs a little bit of effort, but just relatively speaking, not all of the sites have buildings on them, but there are several buildings, and several of those buildings have been there for over a century. So, you know, this neighborhood started development, you know, probably in the 1860s and 70s when Norwich's Civil War manufacturing boom was really strong. there are several issues with this neighborhood that prevent market investment, private investment. And the floodway designation is a new one that has been introduced, but it was floodplain before. So the flood issue has been a long issue on the properties. The structures have been long vacant, so there's deferred maintenance and capital improvements, and those costs have to go towards somebody. So there's a lot of sunk costs that are going to go in to fixing up buildings. The substantial improvement threshold is a barrier under the floodplain regulations, that if a property needs to have investment in it, it can only be up to 50% of the value of the buildings. And some of these buildings have very low value. So there's a 8,000 square foot building valued at $50,000. Under substantial improvement, you'd only be able to spend half that amount, $25,000, over 2 years to fix the building. Well, the roof on that building is going to be a $100,000 roof. So you're never going to be able to fix the roof unless you bring the building into full compliance with the flood regs. And that means raising the first floor 1 foot above base flood elevation. And in an 1868 brick building, you're not doing that. So you're going to demo the building is what the result is.
Jason?
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a question regarding that substantial improvement threshold. Is there any provision for getting waivers on that type of stuff?
Yeah, there is. Norwich actually has adopted a provision into their zoning code that if a building is recognized as a historic structure, it can be exempted from substantial improvement. And so FEMA recognizes that there's a conflict between policies, the policies being floodplain and historic/cultural preservation. So what FEMA regulations have done is they say floodplain regulations are less important than historic preservation. That's the way the law is written. And so they built in a tool that municipalities can adopt. And Norwich is one of those communities that has adopted that tool. And that tool allows for any recognized historic structure to be exempted, which is a pretty powerful tool. And so Norwich has done that. This neighborhood has not been classified as a historic district neighborhood right now. I do have a theory on how the city could do that without it being national or state designated.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
So if the only way the buildings can be deemed historic is if it's in a national historic district?
There are 3 different ways to do it. So state and national are 2 of the ways. If they're in a state or national district, that makes it immediately eligible. If it's contributing, it has to be a contributing property. The third is that a municipality that's a certified local government, which Norwich has been since 1990, can create an inventory of historic structures. And by including those properties on the inventory, they then become exempt. And so when we've talked to FEMA about this, it was very clear to me that there's no community has done that in the country from talking with them about that. So we would be the first.
They did an inventory of buildings?
That then use that inventory to claim that it's exempt from substantial improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so towns have done the inventory, absolutely.
Yeah.
And however, no town has tried to use that inventory in their certified local governments to qualify the property to be exempt.
Okay, got it.
It's a great question. And so, Norwich has done some of that inventory work, and there may be pieces here. And when we talk to FEMA, they want to see a rubric or a methodology for how properties would become eligible or to be on the inventory. Right, Deanna, is that?
Yes. And we talked about looking at putting over the layer for the FEMA layer on our maps and our historic areas, and also in kind of determining which properties we would like to designate that are in the floodways or the special flood hazard areas that are not in a national district and they're not nationally listed, that have significance in other historic ways, that we would like to get those documented and be able to utilize this tool from a local register kind of identification. And they were on board with it, but like Jason says, we'd be pretty much a leader in doing this. And we had the phone call with FEMA, and we had a representative from the state of Connecticut on there, and they were kind of quiet. I think that they're interested in seeing how this would go. Everybody's uses the national and state registers, but they do have that caveat in there, and we're thinking of pushing it and using it down here.
Yeah, but FEMA also recognized that this floodplain is different than some of the other floodplains. There's multiple types of floodplains, and this one being it floods very slowly. It's not a rapid watershed where there's a lot of flooding that happens very quickly. And they had seen that tool used under the state and federal programs in a more rapidly flooding watershed, and it worked effectively there. So they were very inclined to let us test this idea.
Also, Jason, if I'm correct, this is in a single tax district.
Yeah, right now, I think this is in the CCD tax district, if I recall.
Yep.
So Jason, you want to continue with the presentation so we can talk about
so
the uses?
So here's an image of the floodway, just so in floodplain, so you can get a feel for basically the railroad tracks are the defining feature between the floodway and the floodplain. And so there's two separate flood rules within the neighborhood. And that red area is really where the more complexity comes into play. And floodway it has the strictest rules. It limits new investment. It doesn't allow for outdoor storage, and it doesn't allow for new displacement. Any new structure put in the floodway has to prove that it doesn't create new displacement within the watershed. 0.0 feet of displacement is the standard. So anybody looking to build a brand new building in this district has to have an engineering survey of the watershed, and they have to be able to prove that there's no new displacement. However, the existing displacement, in my belief, is a pre-existing legal nonconformity. And as with all zoning nonconformities, those rights continue until they are extinguished by the property owner. So we've been looking at some opportunities in this neighborhood and to try to allow for this investment here, knowing that it's been over a decade of none, is leverage the existing displacement, use the floodplain historic preservation tools that I kind of just briefly talked about. And then, maybe there's an opportunity within the watershed to create compensatory storage where we can create wetland habitat in other parts of the watershed and then relocate that displacement into this neighborhood. This neighborhood's already been a developed site, but take sites that could be developed and convert them into open space. But not only convert them into open space, make them into spaces where flood storage could happen, and perhaps that creates wetland habitat. Okay, so just the first one is displacement. Here's how that might work. Here's an existing building. When you look at the floor print plan of the building, there's an elevation of the flood. Well, that difference between the flood elevation and the base floor of the elevation is what the displacement is. And so that area below the floodplain is already a pre-existing non-conforming activity. And there may be ways that you could take that area and maybe cut out pieces and then maybe add other pieces without adding any new displacement. So the net displacement's the same. So what we've done in the neighborhood, I'm just going to click back up here, is we've calculated what we think that displacement is. Obviously, you would have to have finished floor elevation surveys at some point to be able to get what that finished floor versus base flood differential is. But we know the square footage of the buildings, and with those three things, we could determine the cubic displacement that exists. And perhaps there's a methodology where we could do something like that. Where we, in this instance, we removed most of the functional displacement out of the floodplain, and all new investments happening above the floodplain, which would be FEMA objective. Like what we would do is take things that could be destroyed, like kitchens or finished areas, and move them above. And then below, we would have the pier and support structure that's needed to allow for that elevated structure. And I think that could be a really good win for the community, because very quickly that displacement could just be transferred around. And I have a theory that this could be done throughout the district, because the nonconformity is in the district if it were recognized as such. Like if you've ever heard of a transfer of development rights or things of that nature, I believe that something like that could be developed if there were a methodology for it. That's a,
Jason, you're cutting out a little
that's
bit.
an extreme thing. Okay. So, and then another idea within the neighborhood is just using that displacement to create flood storage capacity under existing new buildings that might be built there. Here's a system that they use in stormwater management in parking lots. Something like that could be developed in this neighborhood, where we build, basically elevate the whole neighborhood by 6 feet or so that it would be above the floodplain. But underneath that elevated area, it allows for the river to flow in and out of it. It's basically tunnels underneath the buildings. So that's just some ideas that in this type of project's been implemented in Connecticut. So I know that it's not unachievable from an economic perspective. Second is that flood preservation tool. We haven't mapped out where all the historic buildings are on this map, so the future presentation will have that. But we've created an inventory using Excel, so we know where all the properties are and what the age of them all are. And a future map will have all that on there. But the concept that I had mentioned was that if we create this local inventory, the local inventory could be adopted by the council, at which time I believe that it's all exempt from substantial improvement. That'd be a major, major enhancement in this neighborhood. I also think that could be replicated on New Wharf Road and over on Hollyhock Island. And so it would take the barriers of private investment out, that barrier for private investment out of the equation on properties that are already developed. We're not looking to try to use this to create more, to get around any other new development rule. And then the other is compensatory storage. I have a straw man. I have 3 sites that I think could make some sense.
Yeah, you're fading out.
Jason,
Remember up near a place called Sachem Point. Sachem Point is where the Quinnebog and Chautauquas come together.
Jason, you want to check your mic?
Sorry, what's that?
You're better and you're closer.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in a space where there's a lot of background noise right now. The cleaning company came in, which they haven't been coming in, so that's good news that they came in. I'll get closer. So yeah, so this is oriented where west is to the north, but there's an area on the Chautauqua River that's about 7 1/3 acres that really doesn't make sense to have development on it. It would really be a good open space piece, but it could, the city might be able to use it to leverage investment in areas where investment has historically happened, like New Wharf and Shippen Street. And so that's one potential site. There's also an area on the Thames River across from this site. It's owned by the railroad company, but you'll see many of the elevation points are at elevation 3. So much of that site doesn't make sense to be developed on. But perhaps it could be excavated out to create the compensatory storage and additional wetland habitat on the Thames River, right in the same neighborhood. So that, dealing with the railroad is, I recognize that that's a Hail Mary of an idea, but it's one. And then there's just another site up on the Yentik River, right on the Basra-Yentik line. There's a site out there that's 3 acres on the opposite side of a railroad tracks. It's a pretty amazing piece of property that would be an ideal open space candidate. So, I'm not sure that any of those sites will be sites that are selected for an idea like that, but we were just trying to think through, if compensatory storage, which is removing some land, some elevation, excavating out a site to allow that excavated area to be moved somewhere else by creating more flood storage capacity, could be done. That's just another avenue that we're exploring, just trying to put a lot of different ideas on the table. The last barrier in this neighborhood has been brownfield. These are heritage sites. And so that 2012 brownfield study identified 133 brownfield sites in the city. And out of these 18 properties, at least 5 of them are brownfields. So, that's one of the best ways to try to resolve a brownfield site is to have the private sector engaged, where they're trying to use their own resources to do the work. And the city has been able to partner with a lot of private investors within the community, Panama Mills, Norwich Beverage. There's sites all over the city where the city has worked with the private sector to clean up a brownfield site and get it back on the tax rolls. So that would be part of the strategy.
Jason and Frank?
Yeah.
Jason and Frank, I'm going to jump in real quick because we have 17 minutes till the meeting has to end.
Sure.
That'll end. So Jason, if you didn't mind kind of talking about potential uses, I don't mind to jump you on it so that we can move on in the meeting because we want to do the executive session with you and Tucker as well.
Yeah, so potentially, what we're trying to do is get back to water dependent uses here. So those would be water dependent uses would be things that are more working waterfront, similar to how this property has been historically used. So some of them may be transportation oriented, and seeing that the state pier is undergoing a transformation away from transportation oriented water dependent activities and shipping, going to be a wind farm production and assembly facility. We think there might be some opportunity for Norwich to take on some of that role. We have we have a couple different businesses that see some potential here. Some of them would be marine construction type businesses where they're using the land to be able to get from the land to the water. You know, surprisingly, with all the miles of waterfront the city has, we have very few places where people can get onto the water. You know, we had done a boat launch analysis years ago, and there's very few areas that you can get somebody from the land to the water, and that is in demand right now, especially as there's you know, with you know, the climate change related concerns, there will be more marine construction activity anticipated in the future. And so, you know, we think that might be a good use. Also, those marine transportation, being able to transport things from water to land, perhaps to rail, that has some values as it's being displaced from New London. So those are things that we think might make sense here with the market.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to the staff report, Deanna.
Well, I would like to ask, I think, well, I'm just going to jump real quick and to kind of follow up what Jason said. One of the reasons that we have them on the agenda tonight was to go over all that, to speak with you about it, and to let you know that if you haven't looked at the Waterfront Development District, like Jason had said, I'm going to give a little bit of history. It changed over to be more mercantile, like stores and restaurants and housing and all that kind of thing a while ago in the regulations, because that was the vision of the waterfront. It really hasn't happened that way. And because of the floodway designation. So housing in the floodway is not going to happen at all, even if we did historic, you know, exemptions. But I think what we're trying to bring to your attention is that there is a desire, and the Harbor Commission has been approached from businesses that are interested in coming up potentially to Norwich from the New London area to do the type of work on the waterfront that they were doing down there, that they're being displaced. So I think Jason wanted to, and kind of to feel you out, because obviously this commission does not make regulation changes, but they don't want to present regulation changes to the council about additional uses that would be more industrial construction uses back into the Waterfront Development District without this commission kind of giving him a little bit of a heads up and a feeling if you guys are completely opposed to that from because it was an industrial area, working waterfront, getting away from that. And now that the market has changed so much, we're seeing a need for that again. You know, not necessarily the manufacturing that was happening in these buildings, but those waterfront sites being used for development for, like Jason said, transportation on the water, on the rails, maybe construction yards, but not necessarily stockpiling in the floodway, but in the special flood hazard area, but using that floodway area for their equipment that's transporting onto boats and things. How do you feel? I think we just want to gauge how the commission feels about getting back more of that working waterfront than that more idealistic retail restaurant kind of look that, you know, that we just didn't get. And now that there's a need, do we want to move forward with being more permissive to have that niche filled?
I have a question for you. So most of these uses that you're talking about, they may be industrial or something like that, but they're all water dependent uses, right?
Yeah, they would have to be water dependent.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I think it hasn't been successful to do, you know, I mean, really retail uses wouldn't, and housing are not appropriate for there. I mean, it just is not. And I think any kind of water dependent industrial use would be appropriate there. I mean, that's my opinion.
That's it.
Do the railroad tracks bring any value to the place, to the area?
There is some, right now there's no spur, but there could be a spur developed there. It's flat and there's room for it. And so yeah, the railroad tracks definitely could. At one point in time, there was somebody looking to locate in this neighborhood because of the railroad tracks being there. So 100%.
That's strictly cargo right now, right?
Yeah, it's a freight, 100% freight line. So it's all under Genesee and Wyoming now owns all of the railroads on both sides of the river. Used to be two different railroad companies. Now they're the same.
I hate to be the timekeeper, but if we could move on, if you guys could just think about this, we wanted to have this, we can bring it up at the next meeting too, as just as a topic of discussion, like give you guys a chance to think about it. But is that okay with you, Jason?
Oh, absolutely. This is about soak time.
Okay.
So, what I've learned
Okay.
is
All right.
we're going too fast here,
All right,
And I
and
think-
so,
I think maybe it would be a good thing if we could maybe go take a look at all of that, the areas that you're talking about, just to see what kind of neighborhoods they're in.
all right. Maybe we could do a site walk, but we'd have to be obviously socially distanced, masked and all stuff, but maybe we could do a special meeting site walk if you guys want to do something like that.
I'd be interested in that.
Okay, we can schedule that. I'll work with Jason and you guys and we'll try to do something. Preferably day or night, real quickly, early after, or during the day since it's starting to get dark.
You don't want it at night. Not gonna
Okay,
say
so early,
anything.
I'm just saying
In
like,
the morning.
4 o'clock or something, but
In the
morning
day
or
on a
like
boat.
4 the.
In
What?
the day on a boat.
You
I
got the-
think
Okay,
you
if
got
we
the
did it
boat?
at 4, it would be not, it would be too dark by then. I mean,
Right now,
Okay.
4 o'clock.
I would
All right,
think in
as
the
long as we'll
morning.
figure out a daytime and we'll try to get it working for you. Okay,
Or
Frank, do you want
sunrise.
to move on? We
Yeah,
got 10
let's,
minutes.
Do you have a staff report, Deanna?
No, but right above that, just a reminder that we have a September 18th, 2020 POCD PIC meeting, but we might have a special meeting sometime in October before the end of the month to adopt the calendar. If we don't, it's not the end of the world. The clerk's office wanted to get calendars done early because of the elections. So if you guys, I just need to send out a meeting invite, and if you can make it, we need to have a few members of the commission, but there was also members, official members, or like, that are members of the POCD PIC. I'll send out a meeting, like a Google poll or something, a doodle, a poll to see when you guys can do a quick meeting. It should be 5 minutes to do a calendar, okay?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay,
So-
staff report, not real, I will just skip staff report, Frank, because we have the executive session. We do need a motion to go in executive session. So when you make that, please, if you would notice that we have invited guests, which are myself, Dan Deniska, Jason Vincent, and Tucker Braddock, that we'd like you to invite in. And we do need a motion to go in executive session. And when we come out, we will also need a motion to come out. Dan, you need to make sure that there's no one else on this meeting.
Yes, Jason, can you make me the host again, please?
Okay,
Well, let's first take the motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Again, the reason for the motion is to discuss property acquisition. And we are inviting guests, Deanna Rhodes, Dan Deniska, Jason Vincent, and Tucker Braddock to this executive session. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we can now
So
go
quickly,
into
just
executive
Frank, really
session.
quickly, Frank, I didn't hear who made the motion. I heard the second was Michael, but who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Mike made
And
the
who was the
motion.
second?
I
Les
made the
did.
second. Les.
Okay, Les King, okay. And Melinda can't be on here. Is she gone now at this point?
Yes, I removed her.
Okay, thanks. And so we went into executive session at 7:52 PM.
For the commission tonight, Deanna?
Nope, you're good to go.
I
Okay,
have a question though, again.
no more questions, Kathy.
I just have one question. What is going on with the Airbnb on,
Washington
what is
Street?
it? What?
On Washington Street?
You mean the one on Broadway, 270
Yeah,
Broadway?
Broadway,
Oh,
yeah.
Broadway.
Yeah,
It was in the newspaper. Well,
Yes.
I don't want to bring up too much. It was in the newspaper. The city is taking formal action, and it's in the hands of the city attorney. And I mean, if you read the article, Claire did a really good job of, what we're trying to do on that, which is get her into, coming in, trying to change our regs to allow for event
Yeah.
venues. But she has just been very difficult,
Yeah.
that has not wanted to move forward with anything. And so there was a cease and desist issued. She did not appeal the cease and desist and continues to move forward. So it's in the hands of the city attorney at this point.
Oh,
So maybe there'll be an injunction. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but that's
Oh.
kind of what's happening. We get a lot of phone calls from brides and grooms and
that's
wedding
terrible.
planners and rental facilities that are just, don't know what to do. And it's just an unfortunate situation right now.
Okay.
but can we think about writing some regulations to allow those kind of things to happen in those nice, beautiful buildings?
We are. We're kind of we haven't written, I wouldn't say we've written, but we're having conversations because the mayor, we had a forum a few weeks ago on short-term rentals, and we talked about that. And this would be a separate thing because the short-term rentals regulations wouldn't allow special events, but maybe we could have a tiered thing that you could have, when Jason was on this too, and Dan Deniska, is maybe we could have different levels of short-term rentals. You have your typical short-term rentals that get licensed, and then you have the ones that are the event venues, and maybe those have to get to the commission approval for those. But the short-term rentals would be like a license check-off kind of, do you do it, pay your fee? But, you know, we want to make sure that we don't stack too many in a neighborhood, even though there's so many beautiful homes that could be event venues. It does have a severe impact for the neighborhoods, and people do complain a lot about weddings every weekend. So we'd have to come up with, you know, some kind of limitation on how many a year. Maybe it's once a month. Maybe, I just don't know if that's even going to be economically advantageous for people to have it that little. But if you bought next door, you didn't want to necessarily have a wedding venue that has every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday having something there.
Right, and we know that this woman has been difficult from the time she bought that property. You know, she bought the property, it was going to be a place where Chinese students were going to live while they went to NFA, and then it was going to be a bed and breakfast, but she wouldn't do anything about exits, she wouldn't do anything about sprinkling systems, she wouldn't do anything about anything. So, you know, I'm not sure you pass any regulations at all, and this woman's ever going to comply with it.
And I think that that's a concern as well, but at least it could bring other people and other venues into play. As the article said, this particular property owner is looking at other properties in the city, and as of today, I was informed that she may have closed on another large home in the city. So I think that's her mode of what she wants to do. And so we got to figure a way, but like Michael said, my concern is that even if we pass regulations to get someone to go through the process and get approved, may still be difficult. So I don't know. She's a challenging owner.
But I think it goes beyond her. I think we really need to look at these big old homes that people do want to use them for weddings, and like, you know, like the Driscoll house. I don't know what's going on with that, but I mean, that's a beautiful property. I mean, it would be nice to see that used for something like that.
It would be.
But I think
so the city has it. We haven't got that one yet. We are using it.
All right, so I think we're a little off track from the
I just
meeting
had that
agenda.
question. Thank you.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll make that motion.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we are adjourned.
Really quickly, I didn't hear was it Kathy that made the motion and who seconded?
I thought it was Mike who made it and Kathy second.
Okay.
That's
And
my,
Kathy
that's
second.
my take on it.
All right, and we adjourn at 8:21. We're good to go.
All right, thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
We'll send out a map. We'll send out a map for you.